Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to our new radio show, The Spiritual Path. I am Kim Gilster, the Spiritual Synergist, and we also have Hafizullah Sufi. Hello, Hafizullah.
Good day. Hello.
How are you?
I am well, and I'll mention for our listeners that this is completely unrehearsed. We have no idea what we're going to say. And but that's kind of like life.
It is. It is. Well, we did cover some things that we did want to talk about during this show. And since this is a new show, we thought it would be a good idea to sort of let you guys know why we're doing this show in the first place. Why we chose to have a radio show and call it The Spiritual Path. For us, we realize that the spiritual path, that all paths are spiritual and that all paths are valid. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so we wanted to have a show where we could talk about all these various paths and have lots of guests on from all sorts of walks of life. Anybody who is, really working on helping people to awaken, become more educated, become more enlightened, et cetera, is a welcome guest on our show. Whether you're a Reiki person, right? Yeah, whether you're Sufi, whether you're a yogi, whether you're Christian, Buddhist, pagan, we are open to all paths. We are all about, self-awareness and love. And we understand that each individual is unique. And their uniqueness in really following who they are and their heart, that they then are able to really contribute to the whole.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Great.
Hafizullah, you're usually very talkative. But I suppose not today so much. Is there something you would like to say about this as well?
Well, what I see in human beings is an enormous, vast, perhaps unlimited potential. And I also see vast and fortunately limited avoidable pain in people's lives. And we get so focused, like looking at life through the wrong end of the telescope, on the hangnails, and we become so identified with the momentary blips on the radar that many of us never really allow ourselves to relax our defenses enough that we can begin to naturally expand into the natural joy and natural spaciousness and natural abundance, if you will, is our human divine birthright. And
yes.
This is the teaching of all the paths.
Yes.
They language it differently, and they give different frameworks and sometimes different prescriptions from inside of the cultural matrix that each prophet and messenger brought to get people to tune to this fundamental message of the possibility of human wholeness. And so somewhere along the line in my career or careen, my focus moved almost imperceptibly from seeing myself as fixing what was broken to genuine fascination with what I can actually do with this marvelous, amazing instrument of my body and mind, and align all of that more and more with an inherent sense of purpose that was revealed to me bit by bit as I cleared the detritus out of my mental field and healed the emotional wounds of, the lousy upbringing that I got and that most of us got.
Mhm. Well, okay.
And somewhere along the line,
uh-huh.
and along the line, my teacher said to me, "You should undertake the teacher training." And so I did, and some chunk of time after that, it was the better part of 10 years, he said to me, it's time that you began teaching and taking on students. And he said, you're not going to be any good at this in the beginning. And boy, was he right. But he said, no, he was absolutely correct. I was rotten. And what this will pull out of you is the support for each next step in your own unfoldment.
Yeah.
And that's turned out to be the case because, suddenly there is a premium on remaining clear and remaining empty so that I can fill properly with what it is
well, yes,
is needed.
But it's not only that, but I think I think that part of what you're getting at here is actually that as we teach, we learn.
Mm-hmm.
Because when someone comes to me with a problem, whatever that problem is, what inherently happens is that I'm challenged. I'm challenged because this person's coming to me, with the sort of energy that I have gained through my journeys, and they're asking for help. They've aligned with me because in some way, shape, or form I am able to help them, especially if they're asking. And so now it becomes a challenge as to, okay, well, how do I help them? And where am I at as a being? And there's always something, even if it's, something seemingly small, that I also gain and I learn from that. Mm-hmm. So there's always this, give and receive happening when it comes to the things that we do. I actually don't consider myself to be a teacher per se. I have been in the position of being teacher in various ways throughout my life and student. But at this point in my reality, I have, had my teachers actually come to me, if you would like to call them that, and say to me, Kim, you are an illuminary. You are a master. Not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, they were laughing at me and telling me that, you've earned a PhD. That doesn't mean, though, that I stop expanding my awareness, ever. I have learned that actually expansion is our purpose of being. And through that, I feel absolutely limitless, even within the limits. When I'm presented with a limit, I see it as, here's another challenge in order for me to expand myself that much more, to become that much more of who and that what I am. We don't change. Change is an illusion. We expand. And expansion is quite different from actually changing. I like to compare it to a flame. Our spirit, our being, our soul, people have different names for it, is very much like a flame. It can only actually be added to and cause it to be brighter. But its basic components, its chemical components, that which it is, do not actually change. And a lot of people are very confused by that. But we sort of got sidetracked because in all actuality, what we really wanted to talk about on this show is what's going on with the current energies. We sort of touched on it a little bit in speaking about limitations. Correct? I'm noticing that a lot of people over the past few months, they've called me, they've messaged me, or what have you, and they feel like they're being psychically attacked. They feel like, there's some kind of darkness around them, et cetera, et cetera. Just a, general feelings of feeling just, sometimes lost when they didn't before. Kim, I've awakened, why is this happening to me? I'm a good person, et cetera, et cetera. But what is essentially happening is that these things have been put in place, these energies have been put into place to challenge us. It is not because we are in alignment with, we've done something wrong, or we're a bad person, or anything like that. Because a lot of people are, these energies are coming in and they're challenging them that way, I've also been seeing a lot of people run backwards into dogmatic thinking, into spaces of wanting to judge others, of trying to determine what is low energy, what is good, bad, evil, or not. If we're in alignment with something, it's our alignment. Even when it is in alignment that the collective is going through and I can feel it. I am still in alignment with that. It's still something that I've chosen. And so it's going to serve me if I allow it to serve me. Correct? I cannot. Go ahead, Jerry. Sorry.
I'm seeing it in a similar way, but the way it shows up to me is, okay, I could go into this long riff about how our egos develop and the kind of the rigidities of our self-representations. And the structure,
but we only have an hour,
structure,
remember?
Right, but I'm not going to. All of that structure stands in the way of the natural fluidity of the divine moving through us as the universe unfolds in each new moment. And when there's more energy in the system, which there is, in the whole subtle energetic of the planet and being a human and all of that, we're being up leveled, and the spiritual station of humanity is raising, and that puts pressure on the rigid structure and sort of reactive emotional patterns that all of us believe. The name that each of us has for that in our world is me.
Yes,
and
that's why we can look at it as a collective. Yes.
And so
that's absolutely what's happening, within the collective as a whole. Yes.
Right. So when that happens,
Mm-hmm.
everybody gets upset, because that's what happens when there's pressure on those structures. And so I've spent, over the last couple of months, I've spent many, many, many hours on the phone and in one-to-one sessions, knee-to-knee with students and friends, helping them to not put their heads back together, because that's not, there's no net gain there. That's just trying to go back to what needs to change, because it already doesn't work. And for people to find that deeper sourcing of faith, if you will, and basic trust that it's all workable. When I say faith, that's what I mean. That the universe is fundamentally a friendly, supportive
but I want
place.
to talk about how do we, okay, as individuals, so how do we, because we can talk about all of those things, and those things are interesting and wonderful, and it's great to have an understanding. But I want to talk about how we, as individuals, handle this? What is the best stance? Because, we're taught that, we're supposed to ask our brain things. That that this information that we're given, these things that we're taught, that then become beliefs, whether they have any evidence to hold them together really or not, are true and real. And so many of these things that we're programmed with put us in a space of judgment of self. So it's much more useful to understand that our feelings, which actually not our emotions, okay, but our feelings that come from our heart, okay, that's the seat of who we are, our divinity, is what we should be listening to. That it will speak to us. It will speak to us when we're in pain. It's saying to us, something needs to be healed. And you are in pain because this pain which I'm giving you will heal you. Okay? Just like when we become sick with the flu. When we become sick with something like a flu, we have an understanding. Children get sick more often with things like influenza or colds or whatever because their immunity system is building. And that's okay, within a certain balance. And we accept that. And as we grow older, we, sort of grow this immunity. But when it comes to emotional pain, feelings of, I'm just going to label them for now, sadness, anger, etc., we're taught to judge those. We're taught to push them away. Okay?
Yes.
Instead
We
of
judge our own
accepting
experience.
them, yes, instead of accepting them as the experience that we're having that's very valid, and learning to work with them. Because when we learn to work with them, just like we do with the, dis-ease, what happens is we build up. We understand it, and it does the same sort of thing. It builds like a sort of immunity, so that when the pain does come to us, and it always will, we don't judge it. I no longer feel my pain as pain per se.
Yeah.
I look at it. Yeah. You look at it, you feel it, it's not overwhelming most of the time. I have my little stints and moments occasionally, but it's not overwhelming. No matter what I go through anymore, it's just not. I am able to, because I accept that I'm having a feeling. And this feeling is there because it's alerting me to something. For instance, something like anger, which is something that, we're taught, oh, no, you can't be angry. Anger is probably the most highly judged feeling. But anger is beautiful, or can be, if it's treated correctly. You know, if I'm really angry at something, say I'm angry because I see war. Oh my gosh, you know, war, it just makes me angry. This is something that doesn't feel good. It puts a lot of people in all of this pain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then, you know, that's actually not a bad thing per se. It's just, okay, now how do I handle this? What do I do with this anger? Okay, well, the anger has alerted me. So now I go about investigating. What is it that I can do? And I go about looking for what works or what doesn't work. You know, there are plenty of examples, you know, of things that don't work. Obviously, to have another war, to combat a war, is something that's not going to work. You know, so sometimes angry people will say, oh, you know, we need to go and fight more. Well, we've shown through history that that doesn't help, and it never gets rid of wars. So obviously that's not the answer. So let's look for something else, you know, and down the road that we go. And then we can affect change in our anger, because we become, the more empowered we become, that anger shifts, actually shifts into an empowerment within your being. You know, so yeah, anger is not a bad thing. All of our feelings deserve our love, and when we treat them with love, and when we treat others when they're in whatever state that they're in with their feelings with love, no matter, it shifts. It shifts us into a space of feeling limitless, of being able to overcome just about anything. The limits become small obstacles.
Bringing off of what my teacher first told me when he commanded me to teach, is he said, your next step is what this will pull out of you. Your next step is what this will make you develop. And the focus that I suggest to people and to everybody is this situation. You know, we feel anger, we feel fear, we feel grief, we feel all of these things. And on one hand, those are there, those are in our lives to be fully experienced, because that's part of being a fully human being, is to access those emotions as deeply as those emotions go. And at the same time, there's always more going on. Life is always pulling us forward into possibility rather than we can accept that invitation into possibility, or we can stay being who we have taken ourselves to be, and that level of contraction and that whole set of identities and attachments. And so the situation is asking of us to become a more expanded being, and what are the qualities and what are the capacities that this situation is asking me to develop? Who do I need to become that I can dance with this situation with a certain degree of grace and class, rather than going into a further state of contraction to try to defend what's no longer workable. And
yes. But the bottom line here, okay, is that who you always are to become is who you are. That's the bottom line.
There are different levels of that. There is what we are in our pure essence, which
there is
manifests.
But the thing is, right? So, but in essence, no matter what it is, it's who you are to become. it's who you actually are. Okay? And, yeah, so, and that's the bottom line, okay? So who are you in your actualized being is, yes, you are always your being. As you're here on the earth plane, though, you're also, your body is a part of that being, temporarily. Your soul is a part of that being, temporarily. So you do need to incorporate those things, yeah? Absolutely you do, which is what integration is about. But before you do that, you still need to fully realize your divinity, your spirit self, who you are when you aren't here on your plane. So that you can then incorporate everything else. You can incorporate that back down into your experience here on Earth. But unfortunately, and this is what I wanted to define out for people, because what we're really talking about here, a lot of people I'm seeing around, they don't understand this, what dogma is. And most people that I talk to believe that dogma is all tied up in religion in and of itself, which is absolutely not true. The traditional teachings, which are within a lot of religions, are actually riddled with dogma themselves, but the religion itself is not the culprit of the dogma. It is the society that is the culprit of the dogma. So yes. I like to talk about, defining what dogma actually is. And generally speaking, dogma, from my perspective, is a set of beliefs that have no evidential basis, no realistic basis. They're just beliefs. And yet there are a lot of beliefs even in Western society right now where science has proved them to be illegitimate. And yet most people are still very much, believing they've got their, everything dug into this belief because, for so long, and I don't blame them, but that's dogmatic thinking. If we're not willing to change and expand based upon the evidence that we have been given, we are practicing dogma. And that has absolutely nothing to do with religion. I agree. Yeah, like, for instance, I'll give you, for instance, back in, even the 80s, popular opinion about, homosexual people was that they were mentally ill, that they were deviants, that there was something biologically wrong with them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the science proved that to be wrong. And so little by little, more and more people are accepting of this, although many people across the world still aren't. And the reason that they're not is because it doesn't go along with their dogma, whatever that is. And in a situation like that, I can tell you as an anthropologist that what essentially happened was that sometimes societies, and societies will bring things into religious beliefs for this reason, because it sticks, because it creates fear. But what they were essentially doing is they were saying, okay, the human population needs to survive. We have a very high infant mortality rate, and so we need to make as many babies as possible. And so what you might do then is create this belief that being homosexual is wrong, because then you get more people making babies who are of opposite sex. And so that would be pushed forward. And that had to do, yes, with the evolution and survival of our species. Bringing, coming forward into today, well, we have 7.5 billion people on this planet, and we actually need to be making a lot less babies. So this sort of dogmatic way of thinking, okay, then brings us into a state of unbalance within this planet a lot of times.
Well, and some of these dogmatic beliefs, emotional attachment to an untestable premise, were just stupid prejudices, and
sometimes
it actually doesn't matter as much where it came from. And that's nice to know. As a scientifically minded person, you as a scientist, anthropologist, archaeologist, it makes the mind really happy to know or to have some framework for how all of that got started. And each one of us needs to do the self-examination about our own beliefs, our beliefs about ourselves personally to start with, but then I want to
interject here just for a second because it's important, okay? It's not just for the mind to know what I was discussing. And the reason that I say that is because we actually learn a lot from our past, what did work, how it worked, how and why something would work or not work. In allowing us to survive on this planet and be happier or not, or less happy as, the whole, or, within a certain environment or what have you. So that, it is more than simply, my mind or someone else's, being happy. It happens to know something, because that's the thing. It's maybe with something that I'm going through personally, I reach a certain crescendo, and my mind is happy because I have this answer to this here, and for a little while I'm happy, but then whatever this issue was that that I thought I'd work through comes back around, because I wasn't at that time when I thought I had the answer. I wasn't at that time able to see more of the totality of what was going on, and how that actually for me then sometimes fits within my environment, with those that I interact with, and then beyond that, how does that fit within the world as a whole? Which then allows me to really, really find my place within that collective, and really know my being. So, the trick is always to have some felt sense of that real identity and how the authentic inner guidance speaks. Each one of us has to do that inquiry. You can't get that from a book. No.
Part of the purpose of spiritual practice is to learn to feel and to learn to see and to learn to perceive how it is for each one of us. And it's a new learning for each one of us. It's like none of us there was a time when none of us knew how to ride a bicycle because we had no idea how to balance on a bicycle. And we did the practice and we got the mentoring from parents or whoever, and we used the training wheels, and at a certain point we discovered as a felt sense what balance on a bicycle really is, and we're forever changed. We can't not know that after that moment.
Yeah.
It may be a little shaky, we may still fall off from time to time, but it's not a mental process. It's not even really an emotional process. It's much deeper than that. And that's the trick. And to be able to be able to keep that thread of awareness, that tendril of awareness over that felt sense of like balance on the bicycle through the whole of our lives, and that's how we stay in alignment with our essential purpose in taking incarnation. And it's not, none of that is going to keep us out of periods of distress and pain. That's not its function.
Right, exactly. No, not at all. But we do have each other. And we also, we do have, lots of different healing modalities and practices, traditional practices, some not so traditional. And everything in this world can be useful to us. And everything in this world can be detrimental as well and veer us away from our path. It's just in how we use everything. And I think that, again, this is the essence of what this show, what we're trying to do with the show, what it's about. And so I wanted to talk about what is the use, of actually having a more direct one-on-one teacher, if you want to call it a teacher, someone who, because really, in the tradition that I was schooled in, which is, much more Hinduism, there's, we understand Sanskrit, for instance. And, a lot of Western people believe the word guru means teacher. But in all actuality, guru in Sanskrit literally translates gu is darkness and gru is light. So this is instead a person who is an illuminary. This is a person who brings one from the darkness into the light. And how one does that as a guru is to actually illuminate that person's path. Help them to illuminate their own path. We add in our light. We hold the space of that light for them to an extent. But they have to be open to receiving it. They then must take that and actually do something with it. Otherwise, it's a moot point. It is not our job to do anything really for another. A healer does not actually heal another. Yes, because it's just not, when we study the physics of it, we understand that it's just not possible. It's not how the physics works. Any doctor will tell you if, they have a patient who is ill, at least, the percentages vary, but all will tell you that at least 50% of their recovery depends upon their attitude.
Yes.
So that, they have to, again, be able to receive the healing. If you have someone who is convinced they're going to die, well, they're going to die. And there's nothing that anyone can do for them to keep them from dying. And I've run across this myself. I've run across people who call, they'll call me and Kim, I'm in pain. Okay, that's okay. I always assure them it's okay to be in pain. But Kim, I'd like to get out of this pain. Okay. Well, the only way out is through. So, yeah, but this pain is this, and or I'm hearing them blaming all of these people, and I'm hearing them say, I still want to be in this pain. As I hear someone say, I want to be in this pain, there's nothing that I can do. All I can do is leave them in their pain, really. I am who I am with my light. So when they come to me, a lot of times it kind of kicks their behind, and it gives them a direction to go to get out of the pain, true. But at the same time, I'm not, as consciously able to work with that person. And still, at the same time, no matter what my energy is, okay, if this person is determined that that's where they want to be, that is where they will be. And there's nothing I can do about it or anyone else. Yeah. It is, and sometimes people are there because they somehow instinctively know that that's where they need to be at that moment in time. And that's okay.
Well, most people are thoroughly dedicated to remaining who they take themselves to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, life itself intervenes in the form of upsets or things that upset them to continually invite us into becoming something more real and more authentic and more fresh and more alive, because all of that structure of who we take ourselves to be, what in spiritual parlance we call the ego,
Mm-hmm.
Is not living a real life.
Yes.
It's constructs. And most of us are deeply dedicated to those constructs and to fighting battles with parents and teachers that really should have been over decades and decades ago, and living out the effects of wounds that we won't let go of because we don't know who we would be without them.
Yes, absolutely.
And
but that's the whole thing. So you will cover. You've been talking about this thing, these constructs, correct? Some of us call them programs, other people call them shadows, but some people call it ego.
Mm-hmm.
And in essence, it really is these constructs, these programs that have been put into place, and they are part of your subconscious. Even in psychology, they know that before we're 5 years old, pretty much we're just sponges. So little children are just sponges. They're, new to this planet.
Yes,
they don't understand what's going on, and so all they know is, these other humans who have been here longer than them, whatever they're throwing at them, whether that is true. And a lot of times it isn't what you're talking to them so much as what you're showing them,
Yes.
So if you take a child who, is 2 years old or what, or even in the crib, and you have parents who are constantly violent to each other, they may not be violent to that child, but, directly, they might not hit that child or yell at that child directly, but they're doing it to each other constantly. So they're telling that child that this world is a place that's super scary. This world is a place where you have to defend yourself. This world is a place where I have to be violent. And it goes on and on about those things. Okay.
Yes.
So those are the programs that the child gets. You sit this same child, in front of a television set, and oh my gosh, it's this is kind of hideous. The commercials they even put on children's television, but they're all of a sudden, they're sponges and they're being bombarded with all of this information, and a lot of it is pointed at them and towards them, saying and making them feel like, oh, you have to be this and you have to be that and you have to go for these material things and, et cetera, and on and on it goes. I mean, if you you have to be whatever your society's ideal is of pretty, and, oh, my gosh, all of these things that really don't have anything to do with the essence of being a happy being. And so now you have an adult who's, say, 30 years old, and they've got all of this programs running around, and, there's all of this judgment, and, so, this seems very overwhelming. And I know I have felt it. Who hasn't felt that just sense of absolutely being overwhelmed and just breaking down? And what some people will call, the darkness of the soul as well. We've all been there to some extent. And that's a good thing, because it's a starting point to enable us to want to reach for and get rid of those programs, get rid of those shadows, get rid of what is false and it's not true to who we really are. And so what I do, and it's not my own invention, I believe the first person to at least write about it was Katie Byron. But, I teach it a little bit different. Everybody has their ways. And so it's basically reprogramming the brain with the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we have learned is that in our soul space, okay, lies all of our memories. If you read the Vedas, they talk about that in there. It's part of what they call our sanskaras. So our sanskaras are, they're feelings, but they're also all of our memories, at least from this lifetime. And so we can go into this through our feelings. But, people tend to do this thing. So I'm going to, do I have enough time to explain it? I do. Okay. So essentially what it looks like is this. We get triggered. And I'm not talking about a big trigger, but, I think that the easiest trigger to go into is when we catch ourselves judging somebody or something. Because really when we're judging somebody or something, we're judging ourselves. Okay. So we have this judgment occur. I'm reading an article about somebody who murdered somebody. And I'm sitting there going, oh, my God, that person needs to be fried, whatever, my thing is. But I'm judging them. So that is actually a feeling. And people don't understand that is actually, it's bringing up all kinds of feelings sometimes. So we actually go in through our heart and into the feeling. We don't ask the feeling what it is. We don't want to label the feeling. Okay? So we're going to go in through our heart space, and we're going to feel that feeling as deeply as we know that we can. Once we are in that feeling as deeply as we can, we then ask the feeling to take us to the first time we felt that way. We don't allow, if the brain starts coming in, it's sort of like when we're in any other kind of meditation, the brain starts coming in and it starts telling us things, while we're just trying to feel. We, do whatever we do in our meditations. Most people do a thing where they, allow the words to just leave them. They might see it, the words are floating away, whatever. But we don't allow for that. We just allow for the feeling, and we allow the feeling to take us there. When we get there, we're going to validate our inner child, but we're not going to do it in a way that's invalidating. Oftentimes, when I hear people talking about inner child work, what they're doing is they will go in and they will hug the child, they will, assure the child, but see, what you're saying to that child is you're invalidating their child's feelings, because you're saying to the child, this feeling is not worthy, there's something wrong with you because you're having this feeling. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with any feelings. Instead, we say to the child, and we mean it, no matter how you feel, it's okay. You're allowed to feel that. And I love you. It's all that child needs to hear from you. Now, that child will get over that feeling, right, very quickly. We see it now because it's being actually practiced with small children now. And, by many, people have been advising this, and so forth. And so I see a lot of parents even doing it now. Or I've done it with small children around me. They're, throwing a fit, and you look at them and say, like, it's okay to feel that way. Yeah, life stinks sometimes, whatever, And they get over it real quick because you just validated that it's okay for them to feel what they're feeling. Now, just like you would do with the child, you are now in a position to have an empowering conversation with the child. Why did you feel that way? What was going on? Talk to me. You will know what your child needs to hear in order for your child to be empowered. And what will happen as well is this. If you are doing this exercise correctly, you will have this automatic light that comes over you. You will know. It's miraculous. You will feel better than you've ever felt in your life. And what this is doing is it's getting at the core belief. Because what happens is we keep aligning ourselves, trying to heal that. And then our brain wants to keep us from the core, because it's where the original trauma happened. And it's usually something pretty simple most of the time that doesn't seem very traumatic to our adult brain, okay? But it wants to keep us from it because our subconscious thinks it's protecting us through all of those programs, and it will tell us this, all these other things. It will tell us that I feel bad, I'm being triggered because of, that first abusive relationship I got into, or because, I was molested when I was 12, or, it goes on and on. And most of the time, like 99.9% of the time, that has what your brain's telling you has absolutely nothing to do with what that core really is. But we only have about 8 minutes left. And I just wanted to get through and essentially explain that exercise because it's really important. If I had my way, absolutely everybody on this planet would be doing just that. It is the one thing that gets in our way of everything else.
Yes.
No matter what kind of healing modalities and exercises you're using, if you don't do that, you're going to eventually end up hitting a wall.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. It's very important that we not label those feelings, but simply to feel them as just raw sensations.
Yes.
And to get enough out of the way to allow those sensations to us about their deeper nature. And the process that you outlined is one that I've done for many, many years, and it really works. And it's very effective for finding some movement in life where there was stuckness and contraction. One of the practices that I do almost daily that can support the process that you were just iterating really, really well, but from a completely different entry point, is from an understanding that our essential being is light, not physical light. The physical light that we see with our eyes is an outcome, is an effect.
I actually have a trust but we do only have about 7 minutes left.
Well, let me take 1 minute. Let me take 1 minute then.
Yeah, go ahead, Jen. Okay.
And the practice that I do is that in my creative imagination, and I do this as a meditation, I recall a quality or a texture or an instance in the past of physical light that I felt to be particularly inspiring or uplifting or expansive or magical. And I present myself to that with creative imagination. The right use of creative imagination is that kind of thing. And to feel, experience, hold that light is self-subsisting between the molecules of the air that I'm breathing. And so this is the light that's between things, not just a light that reflects from things. And to breathe that into myself as a subtle substance and breathe it into every part of my body, breathe it into every corridor of my mind, breathe it into every bone, every bit of fascia, every bit of muscle tissue, all the way down to my toes and through the whole of my body and into my aura. And I'll take to do this. It is a breath practice. And breathing light in this way, using it as a solvent for those contractions, or if nothing else, just shining light into the dark corners that we might find ourselves in, and the shadows disappear because they're not essentially real.
Yes, that's true as well.
That can support the process that you were just iterating really, really well. So,
absolutely,
how many minutes do we have
because it also supports. It also supports, and I've actually I outline. I have a on my and there's a link to my YouTube channel here. But I have a video on. It's called "On Being an Empath and Being a Twin Flame." But I actually run through an exercise in that video that also complements the exercise that you're talking about. Because so you have the light, But then, when you're going about your everyday life, what do you do with that? You really, so you hear people talking about opening up all of their chakras. It's very important to be open as you're going about your everyday activities, whatever you do, because then things don't get stuck, especially if you're practicing, that type of light breathing pranayama, light exercises. And it's all very simple. It doesn't take but a few minutes to do any of this each. It really, really doesn't. You can do pranayama for a long time. I have. I've had days where I spent all day doing that sort of thing because I used to live in an ashram. But we only have 3 minutes left, so here comes our plug part. Because we do have to eat, and we also love helping people in person or on Skype or however we do it. You can find out more about what I do. I am a life coach. I also am a channel psychic. I wear many hats. I have courses on teaching psychic development, relationships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you can find out all about that on my website at kimgilster.com. That's Kim Gilster, the spiritual synergist. And you can also check me out on my YouTube. There are quite a few twin flame videos there, but there are also I have many videos which are not twin flame related, but I currently did. And on my website is also some of my writing. So, and Hafizullah, did you want to say anything about what you do?
I'm a Sufi teacher, teach in the name of the Inayati order, which is initiatically descended from a guy named Hazrat Inayat Khan, who was the first Sufi teacher in the West in the early part of the 20th century, bringing a form of Sufi practice that was very carefully laundered of religious and cultural accretions. It's what we call universal Sufism, as distinguished from Islamic Sufism. And
what do you do behind that? Because we have less than a minute left. Go ahead.
I live and teach in Seattle, and I'm not fancy. I don't channel. I am just a mirror for whatever it is that other people need to see about themselves. And I do have a website. It's illuminedliving.com, ILLUMINED living.com. And some of my blatherings and some of my discourses and other resources are there. And some of my artwork as well.
Awesome. And you guys, we're going to be on every, what did we decide? First and third Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
First and third Sunday, sorry. First and third Sunday of the month, every month. We're going to be having lots of different guests on. And again, if you want to be a guest, go ahead and shoot us an email. You can find that through our website, etc. Or, I also have my Facebook up. So until a couple weeks from now, let's hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful life.
Be well and happy. You deserve it.
Yes. Bye-bye.